Hello and welcome to this edition of In the Sahel, coming to you from West Africa Democracy Radio, 94.9 FM Dakar, Senegal. In the Sahel is WADR's weekly security magazine that delves into the heart of the African security crisis, telling stories and strategies to shape the region's response to pressing challenges. The program is brought to you with support from the Open Society Foundation, OSF. I am Imo Edet, your anchor. Last week we talked about how the Alliance of Sahel States are funded, and this edition will try to x-ray regional strategies to combat terrorism and prevent violent extremism. Remember, once in a month, In the Sahel brings you a panel discussion on security issues of paramount importance.
This is In the Sahel.
But before we get to that, let's take you to Chad, where around 40 soldiers were killed in an attack on a military base in the country's Lake region on the 27th of October. This has prompted President Mohammed Idris Mohammed to launch an operation to track down the assailants. The statement, however, did not name the group responsible for the attack. The Lake Chad region has been repeatedly attacked by insurgencies, including the Islamic State in West Africa and Boko Haram, which erupted in northeast Nigeria in 2009 and spread to the west of Chad. Francis Boniface has more details in this report.
Chad is an important ally of French and US forces aiming to fight jihadists in the Sahel, which has become the epicenter of global terrorism under attack by factions loyal to Al-Qaeda and the Islamic State. Mali, Niger and Burkina Faso have ended military operations with the US and France in recent years and turned to Russia for support instead. The assault occurred Sunday evening around 9 p.m. in Bakaram, an island located in the Kaya Department, Lake Chad province, about 10 kilometers from the Nigerian border, costing the lives of about 40 soldiers, including the regiment commander. Elated, President Mohammed Idris Mohammed went to the scene early Monday morning, paying tributes to the fallen soldiers, offering his support to the wounded, and expressing his solidarity with his troops. In his capacity as the Supreme Commander of the Armed Forces, President Mohammed announced the launch of the military operation Haskanit to track down the attackers and push them back beyond the Chadian borders. The presidency wanted to reassure the populations of the region and the security forces of the commitment of the head of state to protect the entire country against these incursions. A region of swamps and isolated islands, Lake Chad is home to elements of Boko Haram and its splinter group, the Islamic State in West Africa, ISWAP.
Similarly, in northern Togo, the village of Malgbagbu was attacked, where 8 people were killed. Although Gename is often suspected, no claim of responsibility had been made for this attack. Local media reported that the incursion occurred during the night from Friday 25th to Saturday 26th of October. Christopher Ticho completes that story.
According to several residents, armed men entered a compound and killed 8 people in cold blood. The owner of a house, who was housing displaced people fleeing insecurity in a neighboring village, was shot dead along with his guests. This is the second time in less than 2 weeks that the village of Malgbago has been attacked by armed groups. A few days earlier, they had set fire to shops before disappearing without causing any casualties. In recent months, the area has become a hotbed of armed incursions, forcing many villagers to flee their homes to safer locations. The number of internally displaced people continue to rise. As a result, fields are becoming abundant and agricultural activities are completely paralyzed. Recall 19 people were killed in an attack during the night of 1st and 2nd October in Fawongo, a border town between Togo and Burkina Faso. A commander of armed men attacked a contingent of Togolese soldiers in charge of guarding a border and protecting the workers of a local company in charge of building a protective barrier to prevent the infiltration of armed groups into Burkina Faso. The commando managed to break through the barriers already built and attacked the patrols of the Togolese military. They then attacked and harmed where the workers were resting and destroyed part of the construction company's equipment.
This is In the Sahel.
Welcome back. If you're just tuning in, this is In the Sahel, WADR's security program aiming to tell the African security crisis the African way. Let's take this discussion further. In our debate, as our guests, we'll be looking at the regional strategies to combat terrorism and prevent violent extremism. Joining us in this edition are Mr. Idris Mohammed. He is an expert in peace, security, conflict and development initiative. He is also a facilitator at the United States Institute of Peace and a member of the Conflict Research Network of West Africa. Mr. Mohammed, thank you for your time and welcome to the program. And also joining us is Dr. Gad Peter. He is the Executive Director, Clean Foundation, and a security expert. Mr. Mohammed, let me start with you. How will you assess the strategies so far of states in ECOWAS fighting insurgency?
Yeah, so let me begin with the broader perspective. ECOWAS states have had mixed success in countering insurgency. They also fail in many ways due to the indifferences in resources, military capacities, and internal military and political dynamics. While some of their initiatives, such as multinational joint task force, have achieved some success in Nigeria, issues like the porous border, corruption, and inconsistent intelligence sharing, some of the major challenges that is affecting the multinational joint task force in Nigeria. For example, Nigeria had made military gain but struggled to provide stable civic and social environment that prevent extremist recruitment. If you could remember, they have engaged in kinetic and non-kinetic approaches in some of communities to see that they reduce or they block the chances that radical groups like Boko Haram and Saru and some others they use in recruiting people. But the major problem is ECOWAS like a unified long-term approach focused on counter-terrorism, issue of community integration, and also addressing the root causes of this violent extremism like poverty and poor governance. No matter how you try to approach this counter-terrorism or violent extremism, as long as people are wallowing in abject poverty and there is issue of poor governance, unemployment, poor resources, climate change, a lot of things, I don't think these issues can be achievable. So these are the major challenges I think the entire ECOWAS region are facing, and this is what even triggered so many countries, to keep themselves out from the ECOWAS, establish their own alliance, after the military took over their own countries. Because virtually, when you look at it, you think ECOWAS is not solving the issues, because when you haven't addressed this issue I mentioned, like poverty and poor governance, I don't think you're going to address the issue on violent extremism.
Dr. Peter, what is your take on this?
That the response of the ECOWAS states or states within John has been very traditional in the sense that they are not proactive, but they are very reactionary. And so we need to move to a stage where they are more proactive, more engaging, and they are able to think way ahead of those issues that lead to insurgency, how government need to respond to it, and how does their response protect women, young person and elderly, the economy of the state and the region at large. So we need to see a more proactive engagement. The strategy needs to change clearly from what we have now to a more responsive strategy that is able to address all of the issues holistically.
Well, do you think since the exit of Mali, Burkina Faso and Niger from ECOWAS, the strategies have changed or they're still the same?
Well, if there are changes, I'm not sure I've seen any. I'm not sure that has happened. It's possible it has happened at some level that is not very pronounced, but again, the strategy they need to do better in terms of their response. And so the only way we can say things have moved on or things are a lot better is when we see that it's able to function, when we see there is more collaboration within all the various governments within the region, when we see that people are able to cross each other's border without discrimination, or attacked by elements, criminal elements. So I think we can only see change if there's a positive change. But if the change is negative, then the change is no change.
Ms. Ahmed.
So, the alliance also of these Burkina Faso and Co. So the strategy has shifted to some extent, but still the political, issues in this country, particularly, with the issue of the instability, coup, and some other things, has also affected ECOWAS cohesion. And the suspension of Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger from ECOWAS disrupted, the previously coordinated, effort, that Nigeria and some other members in ECOWAS are enjoying. This has reduced the type of intelligence sharing and operational cooperation in counterinsurgency. So this situation has also complicated logistics and increased the pressure on neighboring states. For example, Nigeria, which is share border with Niger, and Niger is no longer now sharing more intelligence information like before with Nigeria. So countries like Nigeria, Ghana, and Cote d'Ivoire, which are now more directly affected by these insurgent activities in the Sahel.
Well, you talked about coordinated strategies, coordinated information gathering. At what point did we get that wrong? Talking about ECOWAS now, generally.
Yeah, so, the major strategies I think the ECOWAS is supposed to focus. Number one is on the collaborative effort between the countries to address the underlying social and economic, causes of this radicalization. So why they got it issue, like I mentioned earlier, the major problem is lack of unified approach. You see Nigeria is doing particular A, while Cameroon is doing B, while Chad is B, while Niger is doing one, Burkina Faso is doing that one. That is the major issues they have. They don't have a unified approach in terms of information gathering, in terms of intelligence sharing, in terms of, community engagement. They need to promote community engagement, because when people are not fully, engaged in the process, this will not see a result. And also issue of multi-stakeholder engagement, not only looking at the security agencies, there are so many other, stakeholders need to be engaged, the religious group, the youth group, the women groups, the business and traders group, a lot of other stakeholders need to be engaged in addressing, and the violent extremism. And this will help them in bringing a kind of pilot approach that will help them in addressing both kinetic and non-kinetic issues that will help them in, tackling the violent extremism in the region.
Yeah, but Mr. Mohammed, some of these armies, say Nigeria, Ghana, even the Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, which we will talk about, can actually say yes, that they have been doing things. They have been coming up with strategies. They have been, re-strategizing to ensure that they, take out terrorism and all of that. But with all of this said, are they being overpowered by this growing rate of insurgents?
I can say that, but apart from that, most of these states, that are part of ECOWAS, face considerable limitation in terms of resources, in terms of training and equipment, which, in my own opinion, hinder their ability to counter extremist threats effectively. When you look at countries like Nigeria, has extensively involved in military operation. How many years Nigeria has been engaged in many operation, but they often lack coordinated, non-military strategies, such as even the rehabilitation program we have, the economic support for vulnerable regions, which are also essential long-term stability. So when you look at some distance, so some states are more committed than others. For example, Nigeria is more committed than Chad, due to the vast resources that Nigeria have. But still, the issue of corruption and internal political conflict, often affects the effective resources allocation. And these individuals that have shown commitment, but their efforts are often, inadequate without a collective regional support. So the overgrowing issue of threat, for example, the rise in banditry reflect deeper structural issues beyond even simple tactical shortcomings. So many regions lack sufficient law enforcement presence. When you look at Nigeria, how many million people we have, how many police do we have, how many military do we have, how many state security service, for example, when you look at the number of the securities and the number of issues we have, we have inadequate human resources in the security sector. Let me give you one example.
Okay.
There is a state called Sokoto State, which is shared border with Niger Republic in the northwest region. I was there a few months back. We are conducting research on, how this how this political instability in Niger is affecting, the insecurity and humanitarian issues at the border communities. This state, there is local government called Ilela. This Ilela alone has more than 600 porous borders. One local government alone has more than 600 porous borders. And when you put immigration, the custom, the police, the military, when you put them all together in that local government, they are not up to 200 personnel. So how do you think this personnel can mount all the 600 porous borders? That is one local government out of many. And if you look at Niger has 8 states, and out of 8 states, Niger share border with Nigeria with 5 states.
Yes.
Out of the 8 states that Niger has. So when you look at this, so many regions lack this sufficient law enforcement presence, and corruption within the security forces, excavate the situation, because some of the chiefs at this country, the security chiefs at this country, are more interested in collecting the security vote, collecting the money, unaccountable money, and some other things. So they rather leave the insurgency and the bandit, to continue growing, to be collecting this money in terms, of, addressing this issue. So when you look at it, insurgent and bandit have adopted, to military responses by operating in small, agile group and exploiting grievance, which authority are less equipped to counter. So, the military, the police are increasingly limited, and the lack of innovative counter, banditry strategies in the northwest region, particularly in addressing the socio-economic issues. These are some of the, issues that have been there for long, and there is no first approach combining military, political, and social intervention to address the banditry in the northwest region, which also add, to the list of so many other insecurities issues the country is facing. When you look at the Boko Haram and the ISWAP in the northeast region, when you look at the Boko Haram element in the north central, farmer-herder conflict in the north central, banditry in the northwest, the Biafra agitators in the southeast, the vandalizers in the south, and a lot of other criminals in the southwest. So a lot of rates of crimes, organized and non-organized crimes that, make, their efforts to say not achievable in the near future.
Well, Mr. Gab, how do we prevent extreme violent extremism? I mean, we've seen lots of this acts. Those are the extremes infiltrating, communities. How do we prevent these from happening and for people being, radicalized?
Well, there is no shortcut to it. It's going to be a tedious and a very long process, which every government must be willing to do. We must have an inclusive government. I will not be tired of saying that. We need to have a government that is, in the real sense of the word, that is a government for all, not for a few. The government that is willing to meet the needs of its citizens, government that have respect for human rights, government that want to provide security and secure lives and property, and government that is there for everyone. And so once government is not there, and you allow criminal element to hijack or take over a space, you expect that they will want to become lords and become more daring. And so government need to be more responsive to the needs of their people and spend less on issues that are not relevant or do not add value to the welfare of their citizens. And so that needs to happen. Election, we need to encourage democracy, because the assumption is that democracy will give more participation to people than military rules. So we need to see a progressive government, a forward-looking government in all of these states to be able to say, yes, we've come, we are home, and hopefully that will help us have some level of stability.
Well, let's look at the AES now, the alliance of these three states. And I know part of why they left the bloc was so that they can, tackle insurgency, head on. So far, do you think, they've been relative improvement compared to when they were still in the bloc?
Well, I think there's power in unity. There is power in working as a team. African countries cannot do it alone without support from other Western world. So if that is the situation, then it means that no country within Africa that will be able to function without being an active member of a particular bloc, member of the AU, member of the West African bloc, or the South bloc, or any other bloc. And so you cannot measure your success if you are isolating yourself from others. So I'm not sure there's been any significant progress by those three nations that excuse themselves from the ECOWAS. So we hope that ECOWAS will be able to reach out to them so that they are able to complement each other. They are able to have a joint force that is working and able to respond to the needs of the people. So I am not sure I've seen any tremendous changes yet. We had one incident where a insurgent leader was killed, I think in Burkina Faso or so. But that was one. So we need to see more response to be able to say, yes, their decision has paid off.
Well, recently there was a report by Reuters stating that the northern region of Ghana is being used as a base for by Boko Haram, insurgents that are gradually, getting into Ghana through that northern axis. Should this be something the Ghanaian government and the sub-region in general should be worried about? Because this seems to be spreading, slowly, and there are really we've not seen any actions from the Ghanaian government as to this report.
Well, the government need to be worried. Not only the Ghanaian government, the sub-regional government need to be worried. Because this was how Boko Haram started in Nigeria gradually. The government did not react when they needed to react, and we got ourselves into the mess that we found ourselves, and we're still struggling to get out. So the question for me, and this is taking us back to what is ECOWAS doing, what is the learning from other states, and how is that learning influencing our decisions in other parts of Africa? So we cannot keep isolating ourselves and pretending all is well when issues are not going on the way they need to go. So what have they learned from the Nigeria insurgency and crisis, and how are they preventing it from happening in other places? And so where's the peer review? So we need to see more of this peer review happening. We need to see more of this intervention across the region happening in a very coordinated manner, because like it has been said, prevention is better than cure. If they don't manage it now and the situation becomes a full-blown then it becomes more difficult for it to be put in check.
Mr. Ahmed, is this something we need to be worried about?
Exactly, because the inclusion of terrorist groups in northern Ghana is concerning as it signals the potential expansion of extremist activities from the Sahel further into the West Africa. So this expansion of this group, reflect the adaptability of terrorist group and taking advantage of weak, border security and political instability in neighboring states like Burkina Faso. And this may, escalate the issue of growing need for cross-border cooperation, surveillance and intelligence sharing among West African states. If not, I think the other terrorist groups that are operating in deep down Sahel may find it very easy, to force themselves into the northern Ghana and some other, even West African countries that do not much affected by this terror-related threat. So it's something that we need to be worried about it, and the authorities need to look at different strategies, because this has posed the weakness in terms of intelligence gathering, sharing, border, and some other, counter-insurgency steps that they think ECOWAS is put in place to address the terror-related threat in the entire region.
All right. Our guests have been Idris Mohammed, an expert in peace, security, conflict, and development initiative. He is also a facilitator at the United States Institute of Peace and a member of the Conflict Research Network of West Africa. Thank you again, sir. And also Dr. Gad Peter. He is the Executive Director, Clean Foundation, and also a security expert. Thank you so much, sir, for being a part of this edition of the program.
Thank you, my pleasure.
Thank you.
So you're always welcome.
All right. This is a wrap on this episode of In the Sahel, WADR Security Program. This program has been brought to you with support from the Open Society Foundation, OSF. Thank you for listening, and many thanks to my guests and colleagues for their contributions. Join us every Friday at 7:30 a.m. and the same day at 6:30 p.m. for the rebroadcast. And connect with us on our social media platforms, X, formerly Twitter, Instagram, at WADR News, and visit our website, wadr.org, for this and previous episodes of this program. I am Imo Edit. Bye for now.